Welcome back. Jennifer Villarreal here. This is the Sales from the Heart Show, the place where business meets heart and soul. And we just dived into a few sales tips, networking tips, and how to deal with difficult managers. And I want to just actually recap that for our YouTube watchers and subscribers here. And make sure that you subscribe to the Sales from the Heart Show and Planeta X Live, and that's PlanetAXLive.com. You can view the show there as well as call into the studio, and that number is 773-236-0015. All right, so we touched on how to deal with difficult manager, difficult boss, people in the office, and some of the tips that we gave there is really stepping into, first and foremost, yourself. Right? Understand the emotions that you're feeling and how to remain neutral when it comes to that. Sometimes that manager is going to have other things going on personally in their life, and maybe they're just a difficult person in general to deal with. And so we want to make sure that they understand that this could be their idea that they're bringing forward as opposed to just yours. And so we can have a collective and group setting where we just share ideas, and we might position that as, you know, what do we think about XYZ? What are your thoughts on this? And you actually let them elaborate more on it by asking more questions. And then they begin to start to own that idea. So it's not just you saying, hey, we should do XYZ, because they're going to have some resistance around that. They're going to maybe have some control issues. And so we want to make sure that they feel comfortable with the ideas that we're bringing forward by having it be their idea as well. Another aspect to that is maybe it's just not something that you need to bring forward in that environment. Maybe it's something that you need to create somewhere else. You have a big heart, you have all this creativity, and it's not being heard, it's not being accepted, and maybe that's something else that you're supposed to brand off and do. That's kind of what happened with the Sales from the Heart show. I had brought that through to a corporate environment, trying to expand upon sales and marketing and how important it is to coach people, right? To lead people, not just manage them, especially that micromanagement. I don't think that really serves effectively for majority of the people. And we wanted to make these shifts in this corporate environment, but the owner didn't want to do that. And quite frankly, that's okay. You know, it's their company, right? It's not yours. They might have a bigger vision than what you can imagine or what you know, and it makes sense for that business model. Or maybe it doesn't make sense. Maybe they're on this path of just hiring and hiring and hiring, and, you know, your position was to hire and train sales professionals, right? But you knew it's best to hire slowly and fire fast. And they had a different thought process around that. That's okay. It just means that maybe you're meant to share these ideas on a different platform. And so that's the next thing that we talked about, is how to make these effective sales calls. Instead of just picking up the phone to call, how else can we position yourself in the marketplace as that expert in authority, right? To have people actually contact you. See, sales professionals, right? People that really truly own that in the marketplace, they get invited in. They're not having to make all these cold calls. I don't teach old school sales. So if you're here to learn the latest and greatest cold calling technique, you're not going to find it here. Could I get you through it to get you started to position yourself in the marketplace? Absolutely. I do this for my clients all the time. But if you're looking for the old school tricks, it's not going to happen here. And really, business is changing. We're not here to try to convince and convert and manipulate and improve how wonderful we are. We know our product, we know our service is actually very beneficial and helpful for those out there. And so we're just looking for them to be able to make a decision. And we have to explain that clearly to them. That is your responsibility, is to be able to present them with education-based marketing, right? And then be able to take them through your process, which we're going to talk about in just a moment. And then they just make a decision. That's it. Okay. So when we do it that way, we can remove the emotion out of being nervous about making a sales call, because we're coming from that place of service. Remember, sales is really about serving others, right? Where it's not about us. And so when we focus on them, then we can remove that nervousness. Now, is there still going to be a few of those nerves if it's your first time going into an appointment or something like that? Absolutely. But the more confident we are in ourselves to be able to share this message, then a lot of that starts to go to the wayside, okay? So any tips, questions, things that you want to share, make sure you call into the studio. We'll be happy to answer those. And also, you can email your questions to info@salesfromtheheart.com. All right, so let's continue. We were getting more into the details about leads, about the ABCs of building up your lead base. We talked about networking, how effective this could be initially, right? And again, this is the basics. When time starts to pass and you start to build up your list, and when I mention list, that means how are we communicating with our client base, our ideal audience, okay? So once we start to do that, then we're going to talk about some more advanced techniques so you don't have to continue going to networking event after networking event. That can be time consuming, right? Not to mention the follow-up that has to happen afterwards. And so first and foremost, we want to make sure that your introduction is effective, whether this is a 10-second, 15-second, 30-second elevator pitch, as some people call it, or an introduction. And sometimes when we're going to these networking events, you only have a few seconds to state who you are and what you do. But see, what I'm more looking for is that vibe that people bring through. And so I have my little notepad there at the event, and I'm making mental notes. And most of the time I forget their names because they say their name first. You should actually say your name last and say the company last. And so I write down maybe the color of the shirt that they're wearing. And I'm only writing down a handful of people that I'm going to want to connect with afterwards. And again, I'm going to meet with this person because of the vibe that they're giving off, right? I want to maybe introduce them to a client of mine, or maybe they can help out somebody else that I know. It's not necessarily always for people who are going to be doing business with me. It's not a potential prospect, right? It's a person. We want to get to know them. We want to know their story. We want to know what's behind what it is that they do. Because what we do in our professional life very much should tie in with who we are as a person in our personal life. So many times we've been taught, hey, you need to keep your personal life and your business life separate. Well, maybe if you're doing some things that you shouldn't be doing, that's why you want to keep it secretive, or you don't want people on your Facebook page or whatever it may be. I hear that a lot. And then when I go on their Facebook page, I see all these things that they don't want their clients to see. That's who you really are, my friend. Yes? We keep it real here. You're not going to agree with everything that I say, and that's okay. And if you have something that you want to share with us in a different perspective, make sure you call into the studio. And that number again is 773-236-0015. All right, so let's get into dealing with these networking events. We have this introduction. We have this compelling thing that we share with people. Then what happens next? They ask for a business card. And so we give them this business card, and some people will actually look at it and some people won't. They just hoard it, they grab onto it, and they think it's like this greatest thing, and then they don't do anything with it later. That's another story we're going to get into. But they grab the business card, you look at it, you should flip over on the back, and you should have a compelling offer there. Maybe it's on the back of my business card, I have 7 truths about Jennifer. And they're little conversational pieces. So usually I mention how I have 4 dogs, and yes, 4 dogs. I didn't intend to have 4 dogs, and then we start talking a little bit about dogs unless they're cat lovers. We don't talk about that. And so we find the next thing to talk about. The second truth about me is I have no middle name. And so believe it or not, I find other people that don't have a middle name as well. Usually, though, they're not Latino. I don't know how I didn't get a middle name, but whatever. It's Jennifer Villarreal. That's it. And so we make conversation about that. You see, we're first getting to know each other. That's more memorable than just saying, hey, I'm in insurance or I'm an attorney. How many other people out there do we meet like that? And then we forget about them. You know, this just happened to me a couple weeks ago where I met another coach, and she was a health coach. And of course, I'm known as a sales coach, or some people call me a life coach or a career coach or a spirituality coach, whatever I'm coaching them on, they tend to give me that title, right? And so we were talking, we were engaging with one another, and then I shared with her a little bit more about my story. Right, I shared a little bit about how I was in those sales trenches, how I was going back and forth through the routine of life, feeling this anxiety, this depression, and nobody really knew. I was considered the life of the party out there, but yet I would come home and I would be miserable. I'd mask behind substances, relationships, my work, television, whatever it was to try to fill this void that was going on in my heart. And she said, "Oh my goodness. This is so strange. I spoke with you about 6 months ago via phone. I remember you now. Wow." See, that's what sets you apart. There is something unique about you. We all have something unique. We all have these gifts that we're meant to share with other people. It's not just about our title, right? Does that make sense? Hopefully it does. Make sure that you feel free to enter some comments below in the video and share with us a little bit about your story as well. And if you're wondering, well, Jennifer, I don't really want to be that vulnerable. I don't want to share how I just went through a divorce, and that's private information. I get it. I understand, but there's still something else about you that we can share to make that memorable. Maybe you have a particular hobby and that you're really good at it, and you found that this hobby has actually helped you in the marketplace. You can talk about that, right? So there's so many different things that we can incorporate as your story and to uniquely brand you. All right, so now that we have the business card, I'll go back to my example. I have 6 truths on the back of my business card listed. But remember, it said 7 truths about Jennifer. So I have number 7. To find out the next truth about Jennifer, go to salesfromtheheart.com. And so what that does is it takes them to a squeeze page or a landing page. This doesn't mean that it has to be an elaborate website. You don't have to pay somebody for a huge project to develop your website. Is it important to have at some point? This is debatable. I'm actually having my website released in about a month. I think after a year being in business, it's about time that I do that, but yet still have that opt-in page. And so the reason why it's important to have this either on your web page or have a landing page is you start to actually collect this data, right? You collect their email address so you can deliver more valuable content to them and you can establish this relationship. Remember, it's about a lifelong value of that client, not just a one-off transaction. So how can you serve them over time? And you see, initially with my business model, it was working with people just one-on-one. And I had a certain tier level of price point, right? I had different types of packages for them to enter into. And then as I began to grow in my business, now I'm able to invest again into my business and deliver more content to people on other scales. Maybe it's something that's a bit more affordable for their income, to get them started so they can continue to build on that income and then be able to reinvest back into themselves and into a particular program, whether it's with myself or somebody else. I provide these resources for them. That's what you want to be able to do, okay? So hopefully this is making sense. It might be a bit basic for you. It might be more advanced. Everybody is different, and that's why at Sales from the Heart we actually customize and work this together with you. So you do have resources out there, and you do have lots of stuff on the internet that you can Google and that you can search in, but we want to make sure that you're actually implementing this. How many times do we go to networking events, seminar, workshops, teleconferences, webinars, and we're constantly feeding our brain. We're feeding our brain. But then what? We get on overload, and we're not sharing this with other people. We're not being able to pass this along to others through our products, through our services, and that's where we get stuck. That's really the opposite of success, is complacency. It's being stuck, not failure. See, there's a lot of things in my business that aren't exactly the way that I'd like them to be. They're not perfect, but you know what? They're out there. And then we start to make little adjustments and little tweaks, and we go from there, right? And then we start to see the progress that happens over a few weeks, over a few months, over a year. But if we never begin, then what happens? And if you're tired of being the best kept secret out there, if you're tired of working overload and spinning around in circles and saying, hey, there's got to be a different way. See, it's not just about working harder. We want to work more effectively, and we want to also have time to not have to work. And some people tell me, well, Jennifer, this is what I love. This is what I want to do. Okay, but there's probably some other people in your life that love you too and that want to spend time with you. And so if you're going through these motions day after day, year after year, and you say, well, when I just get to this point, when I just get to that point, then I'll spend more time with those loved ones. What if we don't have that time? You know, I have to say, the day of my event, the seminar through the National Hispanic Sales Network, the best conversations that I had were after the event, the one-on-one conversations. But when I got home, my sister, who's actually out in New York, a little shout out to her, called me. And we had a conversation until about 1:30 in the morning. That was the most powerful thing for me. To be able to open up, to be able to share these things, not only with the clients and people that I meet, but also with loved ones. We can do that. And you say, well, Jennifer, you know, I sell widgets. How am I going to talk to my family about that? It's really about the connection and the relationships that we make first and foremost, right? And yes, we have a process that we explain then how this person can obtain our product or service. But first and foremost, it's about understanding their needs. It's about being able to ask those questions, finding out what those gaps are, and if you can provide a solution to that. And then you clearly explain that. And so when we're at these networking events and we exchange these business cards, and then you're building a relationship through email, through video, through podcasts, through speaking engagements, whatever it may be, then we can take it to the next step, and then we have to implement that process. Okay? So let me give you an example of a process that I have. And yes, you can actually do this too. First and foremost, I clearly explain that it is a half an hour strategy call, right? For me to understand exactly what their needs are and how I can point them in a direction of a resource, whether it's with myself or with somebody else or something else, right? And so people want to first know that you understand where they're at, what they need. And then from there, I let them know, hey, you know what, if we have to carve out a little bit more time just in case we go over, and if you want to find out how my process works, that will take about 10 to 15 minutes within the call. So why don't we go ahead and set up that hour strategy call? And that strategy call is a business breakthrough, or we can call it a skyrocket your sales strategy call, right? It's specific more to their needs. And yes, you want to give it a name. You want to give it a title, right? It's not just an appointment. It's not a coaching call, right? You have a specific title that you name it. So you can do this even if you're in copier sales as well. You can call it a discover your business solutions needs strategy call, okay? And then the next thing that we want to do is understand where they're at, right? So we have a series of questions that we would give you or that you can craft. And then the next thing from there is you want to be able to address some of the problems or challenges that they're having. So what's preventing them from getting there? Do they just need more information? Usually it's not just about information. Usually there's something else. And before we start to deliver all this information, we want to understand first and foremost, okay, what is that perceived block and obstacle to get that? And then the next thing from that point is we want to make sure that they see the big picture, right? We want to paint that visualization of how things could be different if they do make this shift, if they do have this change with this product or this service. Okay, and typically, again, you want to have a series of questions. Usually it's about 15 questions or so, maybe 10 to 15. And if you have a particular sales script or process that you want me to review, make sure that you send that over to info@salesfromtheheart.com, or just pick up the phone call and give us a phone call here at the studio. Or you can also call me offline at 773-614-SALE. All right, so now that we have our process kind of scripted out, then what we do from there is we have our steps that we share with them. And so we just simply ask, hey, is this something that you want to learn more about? And so we gain their buy-in first and foremost. And if they say, you know what, no, actually, now that I'm talking this out, I can tell this isn't what I need right now, or it's not something that I want to move forward. That's very, very rare if that happens, but at least it gives them that opportunity to not move forward with, blindly kind of in their eyes glazing over, watching you go through your presentation. There's nothing worse than that, right? We want to be able to make sure that we're there to serve their needs. Once we understand and we're asking all these questions, then we know, yes, it makes sense. Now, are there a few times where we don't present our product or service to them? Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, it's pretty rare that we're even going to get them on the phone call, like with me. If I'm going to take somebody through a strategy session, it's pretty rare that I even book the appointment with somebody who is just not my ideal client at that particular time. If they have like a bad attitude or they're constantly questioning, that's going to probably be more work than what I want to deal with. It's just not for me, right? And I'm not for everyone. And so at that point, then what we want to do is, just kindly say, hey, you know what? I think what would be best here is maybe you start with XYZ step first, and then feel free to reach out to me if there's anything else that I can do for you. So we don't have to say it in a negative way, like, you know what? This just isn't a fit. You're not coachable. What does that mean, right? We don't need to go there. And then the next thing, then we go ahead and I take people through my 5 business success pillars, and we've talked about this on different shows. And of course, you can find out a little bit about those on YouTube on my Sales from the Heart channel. And then from there, I take them through and give them a couple options. And so at this point, I'm just explaining what their options are, and then they can make a decision. In the beginning, I used to say, okay, here are your 2 options, and if they're like, oh my gosh, and they're freaking out about price or whatever it is that they're telling you, first and foremost, the first thing that they tell you is usually not the main thing that's actually going on. It's usually about 2 or 3 layers deep, okay? But I used to say, okay, well, if you can't afford it, what is affordable for you? I'm not saying that I can actually give you the coaching services at that price, but maybe there's something else that we can do. Well, then we're having people bring up a difficult topic about money. It's really interesting how society is more comfortable talking about sex than they are about money. It makes people uncomfortable. And usually this stems, if we can just take a little bit of a side note here to talk about this, it usually stems from how we were taught money when we were a child, or how our parents perceived money. I hear this all the time, and I do coach people around this as well. And let me tell you, if you're having issues regarding money, you're probably going to also have issues receiving that money. And so we want to make sure that we get those things clear, right? Anything that we're having problems with in our business, with our sales calls, is probably being magnified, so we address the issue within. But Jennifer, people just don't call me back. Well, how many conversations have you been avoiding? How many conversations around money are you avoiding, right? And so we want to make sure that we address those things. And so, am I going to talk to you about how we can, connect the dots from the past? Well, you know what? That's a lot of work, and I have a process and a program for that as well. And I have a volunteer group that I can bring people through to that, which really doesn't cost a lot of money. So then what is the excuse why people can't go? They're scared. They're nervous, right? And sometimes there's like 3 main issues of why people don't move forward and take action with something. And usually that is a lack of trust. So maybe they don't trust the person that's presenting them this information. The next thing, that they might just not have the commitment to it, right? And then they just have an overall fear around it. And so we want to get to the root of that. And through coaching, we're able to do that and dig through those layers. But also, maybe it's not a challenge. Maybe you want to take this to the next level, but you're just kind of stuck and you feel confident with money, but you don't have a clear set process. And so this is how it all, links in together, right? That's why you hear me go from the inner stuff to the outer stuff all the time. We talk about the spirituality aspect of things. And again, it's not about relationship. It's not about religion. It's more about your relationship whether you call it God, whether you call it Buddha, whether you call it a water bottle, for crying out loud. I don't care what it is that you call it, as long as it's something other than yourself, right? And so it's about, again, how can we move past this fear of not having enough? You know, I talk to some people that say, well, I just need to have this nest egg and then I'll feel secure. You know, I need $20,000 in the bank. I need $5,000 or whatever the dollar amount is. I just need to know that I have this and I'll feel secure. Well, yes, when we talk about money from a budgeting standpoint and savings and investments, that's all important, all right? But the reasoning behind it, the deeper reasoning behind it, is probably not very healthy. And so, again, we have to remember first and foremost who you truly work for and understand that you are provided for and that you do have these unique gifts, right? And then we establish that firm foundation, and then we're able to provide clear-cut steps in a process. You need to be able to have a process in your business to be able to take people from step 1, 2, 3, make a decision. And if somebody doesn't want to make a decision, then guess what? That's still a decision. Right? So they're either going to continue to move forward with you, or they're not going to move forward with you, but they're going to go ahead and implement this with somebody else, or they're just going to stay in the same position and constantly repeat this problem that they have. And see, the decision that they make about that, I have to stay neutral to. I have to stay neutral to it, because then what ends up happening, right? We can get down on ourselves. We can start to get desperate and say, oh my gosh, I have to convince them of this. You know, this is going to impact their lives in so many ways. And if they just know this and they just knew this, they can do this and this and this. Yeah, we get it. But are we still able to serve other people out there? Yes. Maybe it's just not their time. Maybe they're just not ready. That's okay. We stay neutral. But then guess what? When I enroll a client into my elite program, right? When they make that decision to say yes to themselves, I can't get all excited, because then what happens? We have that up and down cycle again, right? I stay neutral. Am I happy for them, especially when we start to implement and they get the results? Absolutely. But we have to stay as neutral as possible to those decisions that they make, because then that's where the emotion starts to come in when you make those calls, when you're starting to connect with people, that desperateness that comes off, that overconfidence, that ego, that pride. Hey, I'm Mr. Top sales rep and I'm making $100K. Okay, that's great. Did you know that you can actually make more and serve more people out there? Or are you going to just stay, you know what, this is just good enough? Are we really doing, are we really servicing other people when we have that mindset? Not really. But you know what? If that's what's comfortable to you and you want to, make 50,000, 60,000, $1 million plus, whatever it may be, that's okay if that's your goal. But we want to be open to the other possibilities as well, and then make that decision. And then say, okay, you know what? No, this isn't for me. I'm presented this opportunity and I just want to keep it here. You see, I did that as well. I said, I just want to continue to work with my clients one-on-one for at least a year or two. I was feeling a little bit overwhelmed, starting a new business, having some personal and family things going on at the same time. And then all of a sudden, I was being called to do more speaking engagements. I had the opportunity for this show. I had an opportunity for a couple other things. And a part of me said, okay, I want to do it. But yet I was a little bit self-sabotaging. I thought, well, I just want to stay comfortable here. But it's never really comfortable in our comfort zone. And then people say, oh, we need to step outside of our comfort zone. But it's never really comfortable there. Really, the zone that I was meant to be in and stay in is that zone that was designed by my Creator, by my Heavenly Father, right? And so when I took that leap of faith, and all of a sudden things started lining up, and the gifts and the ability for me to be able to handle these new opportunities started lining up. The people in my life, the coaches in my life that can give me step-by-step process or guide me through certain things started, was there. And so the same thing for you. If you're sitting back and you're saying, well, I just need to do XYZ first before I can do XYZ or ABC, whatever it may be, it doesn't always work like that. We have to just make the decision to say, yes, I'm open to this, explore it a little bit, make some adjustments, and then we either continue or we don't continue from that point. Okay? So, all right, let's get back to what we were talking about a little bit here about money. So we either want to, we want to address this fear. We want to address this lack of commitment, this lack of trust, right, with our clients and for ourselves. And then from there, we decide if we want to continue to move forward with that person or we don't. And you as the sales professional has that decision as well. It's not always just the client, the prospect, right? It's also you. You have to make sure this is a good partnership. And sometimes stepping away from this money or these extra opportunities is actually a good thing. And it's actually going to bring you more money down the road. A lot of times we say, but I really need it, Jennifer. I have to pay my bills, right? But you know what? How much is that going to cost you to run around like crazy for that client, jumping through hoops because you feel bad for them or because you know that this can really make an impact in their lives? But they're just not ready to fully embrace it. They're giving you excuse after excuse after excuse. Sometimes we just have to let them go on their way, service them through your valuable content that you deliver through videos, through podcasting, through emails, right? Through a book. And then maybe they come back at a later point in time, and at that point, they realize, wow, your prices have gone up. Yes. How much did it cost you not to move forward? Right? And so, again, it's just about having these real conversations, not taking responsibility for other people's decisions, but yet showing up 100%, giving them more value than they even imagined. That's how we sell. That's what sales is really about, right? Getting real. Understanding that you have a gift, you have a service to deliver, and show up 110% to give that. And so I hope this has inspired you today. I'm not here to motivate, right? This motivation comes from within you. And if you're having a hard time connecting with that, we want to be able to remove these blocks. We want to be able to release the guilt, the shame, the resentment that you have caused to other people. Yes, we have done that. And the things that have been done to you. And then all of a sudden, you can actually fill back up, okay? All this wisdom, this information is then being able to be shared with other people. It's being able to be applied through your business and through your life. And yes, that will help increase your sales. So thank you for allowing me to share this with you today. I truly appreciate all of your support, your comments, your feedback, your questions. And yes, you can email us at info@salesfromtheheart.com. You can call us offline times at 773-614-SALE. And the studio number, of course, is listed there as well. And for next time, that's 773-236-0015. Make sure to program that into your phone and join us next week live, Thursdays at 10 a.m. Thank you so much. Continue to be a blessing to other people. And remember to sell from the heart. This is Jennifer Villarreal.